All right, so I came to the Salvation Army in January of 2013, and I'd been struggling with addiction for maybe 6-7 years of my life. Just brokenness in my life. I probably started drinking around 12. About 15 years old, I'd moved in with my father and started to build a relationship with him, and he committed suicide. And then it gradually got worse and worse until I got to the point where I was shooting up methamphetamine and making it and trading it for heroin. After the suicide, it was just a lot of running. I dropped out of high school, moving around. My drug use just slowly kept getting worse and worse until I ended up shooting up heroin and getting close to overdosing many times. And it just took for God to speak to me and to kind of take me out of that situation for a moment and to show me that my father's suicide impacted my life, but that I was killing myself and that I was going to commit suicide using drugs and impact my daughter's life. I had always, I don't want to say grew up in church, but I always knew of God. And like even early on at a young age, I've had moments where I felt a strong experience of God, but it never changed my life. I never had discipleship or to learn or grow, and I thought I knew everything. I thought just knowing Jesus was knowing parts of the Bible, but I never actually had a relationship with him or needed him because I had everything else I needed, or I could just use the drugs to supplement or substitute anything I was lacking. The defining moment, I want to say it was jail or prison or an overdose, but even those things never changed me. I still kept going. It wasn't waking up with a bad tattoo or any things that would be rock bottom for normal people. But at this time when I was still in my drug use, I would have my daughter sometimes on the weekends, and I just drank way too much on a Friday night. I remember I woke up and my daughter was standing in her crib crying, and just it was in that moment that God sobered me up and gave me clear eyes to see what the situation was like, but also spiritually how broken I was and how my brokenness was going to reflect in her life. And I, in that moment, realized how much I cared for her and how much I did not want that. I came to the Salvation Army not knowing anything about it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a thrift store. I didn't even recognize the name, until I got there. And I just walked in, and they provided a spiritual family for me and discipled me and built me up and taught me how to be a father, taught me how to be a man and what it is to have integrity and to be above reproach, and how that part of my story was defined as being an addict, but that's not who I am. That's just sin, and we've all sinned. And I don't ever have to go back to that addiction because I'm not an addict any longer. I'm free. Last year, as I'm getting ready to complete our program, I'm like 2 weeks from graduation, and my officer said, well, he got an email saying a spot opened up at TYI. So I was like, do you want to go? I was like, yeah, why not? So I came to TYI last year, and I did the regular course, and I did some of the electives I loved, and it was about mission. And then I experienced worship in a way I've never seen before, just a group of collective people. And then I started to learn to feel the Holy Spirit in those moments and be sensitive to it. And then also to learn spiritual practices while I was here, and some of the electives in the classrooms of listening prayer and the Holy Spirit and how he speaks to us. But I also saw, I knew how the Army was like a family, how I was welcomed in by my officers, how they adopted me, and then we became a spiritual community. But also the larger spiritual community, how I was welcomed in, and I wasn't afraid to share my testimony, to tell them, this is me and this is what God's done, and everybody loved and accepted me.